In arguably one of the greatest works of antiquity, Plato laid out a concept of the soul that likely stems from an earlier Indo European source, as similar concepts can be found in Nordic traditions and even in Hinduism. Plato's three parts of the soul from lowest to highest are the epithumedikon, the thymus, and the eros. In Hinduism, they are Ahamkara, Atman, Brahman. These three parts can also be found in atheistic concepts such as desire, awareness, and reason. Plato used the analogy of a chariot to describe an individual being drawn by two forces, the white horse associated with the higher self and the black horse with the lower, pulling the charioteer to his destiny. The more aware of these two natures we are, the more likely we are able to make decisions that appeal to our higher nature. An example of this is as follows. If I have a conflict of decisions between whether I want to eat the potato chips or whether I shouldn't eat the potato chips because I know they are unhealthy, this is proof of two forces counter to one another working within my own mind. The primal urge being the negative or that which takes away from the logos, and awareness or thymus being the positive, that which appeals to the higher nature. This is why the thymus is closer to the logos in representation, and why the Atman and Brahman work in unison in Vedic scripture. Christians would call this the will of God, or that which appeals to heaven. Making a sacrifice is a way for us to recognize and give praise to this higher part of ourselves. It is the act of exchanging something material and tangible for something metaphysical. If you give up something valuable, in return you will receive praise from the gods. This is why adopting a religious practice is vital, as it ingrains the concept into our mind. Which is why you will find that the happiest people on earth are not happy because of their possessions, but are simply happy due to their higher nature. The three aspects of the soul also correlate to social hierarchy of a society. The social hierarchy in most ancient cultures is as follows: priests or Brahmins at the top, warriors or Kshatriya as the second class, then workers or merchants, also known as Vaishyas in Indian society. In ancient times, people believed that a person was given one of two natures at birth: the white horse nature associated with priests, or the black horse nature associated with workers. The combination of these two natures is similar to the yin and yang symbol in Taoism. This constituted the essential nature of an individual to function as an orderly force in society. Society would have been set up as a hierarchy for the purpose of maintaining order. The priest caste and the king would be an actual devout and regal entity, much like how Westerners view a yogi today. This class of people would be considered a divine force on earth to help guide a people as a spiritual compass. The next class, the warriors, would be considered the protectors of society. They would be associated with order and maintaining consistency within a society. This group of people would be symbolized with the balance of the white horse and the black horse described by Plato, being ordered and close to the gods in their daily actions. The third class is the workers and merchants. Some societies would separate these two and also have lower castes of slaves or people who did highly undesirable jobs. This group of people would constitute most of society and make up the majority of day-to-day activities required to maintain a society. This caste reflects the chaotic black horse referred to by Plato and is associated with desire. I'm going to briefly explain modern politics based on this concept that I have laid out. These concepts have a large degree of variance and are by no means fixed or absolute in any way. The idea of communism is the liberation of the working or merchant class. This is the abandonment of all religious concepts. From a fairness standpoint, this seems like a logical answer to all the world's problems. In other words, a utopia. But if we consider that this has been laid out by ancient people, we have to consider that man does, in fact, have a soul that is controlled by two natures. A society that does away with the white horse is inevitably leaving society to be controlled by the horse of chaos. When this begins to occur, certain signs will emerge within a society. Some of these signs will be social divide and political unrest, and a pseudo-worship of the lower self of desire. Drug abuse, sexual deviancy, greed, and atheism are among the signs that a society is shifting away from the ordering principle. It is no coincidence that certain groups are calling for the destruction of the patriarchy and the demonization of masculinity. What they do not realize is that a society without this element is doomed to fail just based on our fundamental nature as humans. A social hierarchy based on religious principles places emphasis on this quest for good, as opposed to a society based around monetary gain, which will inevitably lead to an obsession with greed and desire. In modern times, it is quite hard for us to determine which caste we belong to, as the lines have been blurred by many elements, but there are some qualities that we can look for and point out to help us figure out where we lie in the ancient hierarchy. Very few people in the modern world, especially in the West, actually belong to the priestly caste today, as many who would have been are now diffused into the greater population. The devotion that it takes to achieve this way of being is very difficult, as it almost requires that you spend your days in meditation and away from society as a whole. The act of participating in a day-to-day job and not having a society that places emphasis on the importance of this class virtually renders this caste obsolete. There are certainly remnants of it still, and I would argue that it is emerging from the darkness as we speak. The warrior caste is cultivated by Stoicism and is essentially the priest within society. If you have read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and are following in his footsteps, you are likely a part of this caste. A warrior has a strong will and rarely falters in giving in to his carnal self. A warrior doesn't let things affect him that he can't control and embraces all good and bad situations in his life with love and views them as a positive learning experience. Some characteristics of this type of person are never complaining, exercising, hard work, practicing good eating habits, no addictions, and considering doing good deeds for a friend as an enjoyable activity. A warrior is a team player and puts others in the quest for good above himself. The worker caste can be associated with the carnal nature, and the reason being is that it is associated with the acquisition of money, with little emphasis being placed on the quest for the higher self. Characteristics of this class would be addictions to food, smoking, alcohol, drugs, pornography, poor physique, acquiring money, and not placing much emphasis on being a better person. A person from this caste is generally not interested in doing things such as holding the door for others, respecting other people's property, donating money to help a good cause, and is less likely to follow the rules of a society. During Yule, ancient people would make an oath that was punishable by death to their king or their priest, in order to show that they are dedicated to improving an aspect of their life that society deemed unsuitable. This is very similar to baptism, where an individual would dedicate themselves to the quest for the higher self. In pre-Christian Germanic society, there was a force known as the Fylgja. The Fylgja is a sort of mediating aspect of nature outside the body that chooses a soul and gives it one of the two natures, by attaching itself to the individual. What this indicates is an outside feminine nature spirit that has an effect on the internal self. The nature of an individual would be indicated by an animal, such as a pig for someone associated with the working class, or a bear with someone of noble birth. Another entity associated with this hierarchy is the Hamenya in Germanic society. The Hamenya could be looked at as the good deeds done by an individual that has a positive impact on later generations. For instance, if I do something honorable, my children will be known as the son of so-and-so who did this great deed, and in turn benefit them in their own life, therefore indicating an element of reincarnation. The Hamenya has significant correlation with the coat of arms in British society as well. Although it by no means is the same thing, it would be easy to make the claim that this concept of the coat of arms and even the surname arose out of this concept, as the coat of arms would represent deeds achieved by an ancestor. Ancient people divided time into a three-part cycle that Plato called the Great Year, and Hindus call the YUGA cycle. There could be argued to be 4 elements to this, but I'm going to break it down into 3 for simplicity purposes. Traditionally, the YUGA cycle is broken into these 4 parts: the Golden Age, or SATYA Yuga, the Silver Age, or TRETA Yuga, the Bronze Age, or DWAPARA Yuga, and the Iron Age, or Kali Yuga. The reason I have broken this down into 3 parts as opposed to 4 is that there is no clean break at each cycle. Rather, a gradual shift occurs between each age with blending of the 2 ruling parties and a pinnacle breaking point at the middle of the Kali Yuga. This breaking point is also known as Ragnarok in Norse mythology. This cycle is based off the precession of the equinox, which is the gradual shift in the Earth's axis that lasts roughly 25,772 years, and was tracked by ancient people for thousands of years. The Neolithic people who built monuments such as Stonehenge and Göbekli Tepe were obsessed with tracking this motion. According to most sources, we are currently in the Kali Yuga, which makes perfect sense due to the current shift in our focus towards the lower self as a society. The Yuga cycle describes which class of society will rule during each age, with the Golden Age being ruled by the priests and slowly dying out midway through the Silver Age, The Silver to Bronze Age rule by warriors, then dying out in the Bronze Age, and rule of merchants beginning in the Bronze Age, reaching its prime in the Iron Age, and then descending from there. Many people today view these concepts as being superstitious or out of date, but we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss our ancestors and the trial and error that it took to come up with these concepts. We are arguably only 300 years into this experiment that we call the modern world, and we have to remember that many of these concepts have lasted for thousands, possibly tens of thousands of years, and are the foundation of all that man has created. In an age where it seems harder and harder to resist our primal urges, we must look to the heavens, sacrifice ourselves just as Odin did in the quest to become warriors and obtain glory. The age of darkness will end, and if we choose to become warriors and enter the great halls of Valhalla, one day we will re-emerge as priest kings in an age of gold.